Hello everyone, my name is Josh Butterfield. I'm running for sheriff of Camden County here at beautiful Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri. I'm running strictly as a promise to my son to try and help the world. I promised him I'd try and do everything I can to make the world a better place. I legally can't win because I stand by what I believe, and I believe that taxation is theft. I'm just saying the things that need to be said. You can go and look through my previous videos and find out all my history and what my plan is for sheriff and the truth about my taxes and everything else. What I'm doing here is I'm giving my rebuttals to the recent sheriff's debate. I did pay $100 to be a sheriff candidate. I filed all the paperwork, but like I said, I legally can't win. So the local Republican club who threw this debate voted and decided to not have me be a part of it. So I understand where they're coming from. I get it. Legally, I can't win, so I probably shouldn't be a part of it, but I feel that I could possibly still be a write-in, or some of my ideas do come into play, and I definitely like to be able to debate on this platform. So I'm just making my own video, and I'm making my own responses, and these are my responses to the questions that were asked. So I'm just trying to keep it as fair as possible. Each candidate was asked a specific question and had 2 minutes to answer, and then a 30-second rebuttal, and all the other candidates had 30 seconds. So what I'm trying to do, since I didn't get asked a specific question, is I'm trying to just answer all the questions at 1 minute and keep it all fair. So that way we have the same amount of time roughly to speak. I get a little bit more. I think I get 1 minute extra doing it that way, but yeah, so I'm doing my responses on my own, and I'm sorry about everything that I got going in here. Like I said, I'm just doing it in my camper here. I got a wrinkly sheet behind me, and it's not the greatest setup, but I'm just doing with what I can with what I got. So please bear with me. And I'm kind of wearing gray right now, and I think that is kind of the persona of where I'm at with everything. Police officers are meant to see everything in black and white, just cut and dried, but I think in the real world there's a lot of gray out there, and that's kind of where I'm operating and where my philosophy's at, and a lot of everything I'm doing, I'm just kind of in the gray zone, and it's far from the norm and far from what most people have been presented. But bear with me and just try and think outside the box a little, and look at some of these ideas logically, and really play them out, and just see that it's possible to do things a little different. And that's all I'm fundamentally trying to do, is just throw out ideas to help the community and just help the world. I just want to try and help in any way I can, and just sitting down with even people opposite side from us and trying to create peace and work for solutions, I think is what we really need to do. So I'm just throwing out ideas out there. Sometimes they're a little wild, but like I said, I think they make the most sense, and I welcome everybody to please sit down with me and work peacefully with me to work for solutions. And I'm trying to get the other sheriff's candidates to do it, possibly at the next meet and greet. And anybody else out there who would sit down with an opposing side and peacefully work for solutions, I would greatly appreciate it. Please reach out to me. The number is 573-286-8316. Just reach out to me, and I'll be happy to do an interview and set up a roundtable discussion. I even have a platform for us to all kind of talk it out. So without further ado, here are my answers to the questions.
So what we're going to do is we're going to start by reading the debate rules, and then we'll move into candidate introductions. This debate is structured so that it does not promote or advance one candidate over another. The public expects tough questions and thoughtful answers. The debate will last approximately 1.5 hours to 2 hours from open to close. Candidates have all been provided with the general subject topics to be debated, but not the questions. The moderators will present the question to a candidate. The moderator will allow rebuttal responses from the other candidates, and possibly a final rebuttal response from the candidate who received the original question, if the moderator determines that the dialogue is important enough to continue. Some questions may not require a rebuttal response. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to each question, and rebuttal responses will be limited to 30 seconds each. Each candidate will receive the same number of questions and rebuttal times. A display time card indicating 10 seconds remaining will be utilized, which is right there in the front. The moderator and debate team will enforce the time limits. Opening and closing statements are limited to 60 seconds each.
Hello everyone, my name is Josh Butterfield. I'm running to try and help my family, this community, the country, and the world, really, for that matter. If you look, our federal governments and our larger governments are leading us all down a self-destructive path, and I don't think it's very good. It's so large and out of control, it seems like we don't know what to do, but I think I have a solution, and that's what I'm trying to get through and just portray to everybody, and hopefully people can take these ideas and run with them. I think if we can put all of the power possible into the hands of the local community, we can fix things locally where we can't fix things federally. The federal government and larger governments are out of control and we can't do anything about it. So just peacefully step away locally and secede and put all the power in the local community's hands and keep everything public. There's a home rule charter that we can create to put the power in the people's hands and just vote in petitions and create our own ways of life locally. And that's where I'm trying to achieve. Thank you guys.
The first question will go to Brian Butts. Brian, Republicans are seeking to have the term constitutional sheriff codified into the party platform. What is a constitutional sheriff, and do you plan to operate as one? 2-minute response.
So I don't watch TV and I don't keep up with any politics other than local politics, so I don't really know what's going on out in the world. So all I can do is speak from a logical standpoint. Logically speaking, every sheriff should be a constitutional sheriff because they took an oath. They put up their hand and they swore an oath to the Constitution. And I think that that's where a lot of sheriffs and a lot of police officers are conflicted right now, because a lot of the laws that have been created by politicians directly go against the Constitution, so they're left in a turmoil within. But I think the Constitution should always win, and every sheriff should be a constitutional sheriff. I actually wrote a book, and the book is based on the Bill of Rights and freedom, and my book is called A Handbook to Freedom, and that's what I believe to my core. And like I said, I've created a local way for people to govern themselves. I call it localism, and I base it around the Bill of Rights. And so yes, absolutely, I believe that every sheriff should be a constitutional sheriff. Thank you.
This question's for Jeff Beecham. The Camden County Commission recently passed an ordinance banning license plate reader cameras. As sheriff, would you utilize these readers? What would you do what would you do about the existing plate readers around Camden County? 2-minute response.
So the license plate readers, I believe, are absolutely unconstitutional and is far outreaching of the government, and that gives them too much power. I do have a little bit of a different stance on this. I think that we should reach out to the public and try and help involve the public and get the public involved in any way possible and as much as we can. So I think around here at the lake, there's different entrances to the cities and the main ways to get in and out. I think if we could legally do it, anybody could that lives by the side of the road could just put a live feed camera on the side of the road and record it and make it public, and the police don't even have to be involved. Citizens could do that. And like Lake Area Happenings, there was recently a boat accident, and I'm not sure if it got solved yet, but I know that people are very connected, and they're so connected, and the citizens could actually solve a lot of these crimes. And just the police force should work with the citizens, and we could all work together and work it out that way, and just you'd be able to see who goes in and out, but not without scanners. No scanners, absolutely not.
The next question is to Jimmy Brashear. Jimmy, employee retention is a bit of a struggle for the sheriff's office. What will you do as sheriff to retain deputies? 2-minute response.
All right, so anytime that you have a problem keeping employees, the problem is either going to be the pay and not getting paid enough. It's going to be an unhealthy work environment to where people don't want to be working there, or it's going to be because the job's terrible and it's just a really hard job to do. And I think we're falling into a bit of all three of these categories. At the very least, these guys have terrible jobs. They need to be making $20 at least for the new guys, and then the older guys that have been there for a while, they need to get paid a lot more. I hear that the seniority isn't getting paid for, and you guys are making the same, which is just, it's hard. The older guys deserve more, absolutely. And so there needs to be a pay scale for the older employees that have been there longer, and just cut expenses. Take the expenses out, and we spend about half the budget on other stuff besides the payroll, so let's cut out all the other stuff and spend it on payroll. So that's going to be my solution, pay people more.
The next question is for Greg Sellers. There's been a lot of discussion within the courthouse about using the Lake Area Narcotics Enforcement Group or Mid-Missouri Drug Task Force. As sheriff, which organization would you use and why? 2 minutes.
I choose neither. I have a little different view on drugs and everything that's going on. I think that you can drive down the road and look for buildings, and there's actually advertisements on the side that say drugs real big on the side. So your Walgreens, your CVS, all of those, they're distributing drugs as well, but we fail to recognize that. And ultimately, I think the system is prospering off addiction, and it breaks my heart. And there's addiction in the world from all sides, and instead of prospering off of it or ruining people's lives, we need to put our arms around them and try and help raise them up. And instead of throwing them in jail, I think we need to offer counseling, because most addiction comes from PTSD and some kind of traumatic experience in someone's life. And if we could help people with that, we'd help their addictions. And as long as they're just harming themselves, you should be free to harm yourself. If there's other crimes being committed, obviously, get them for that. But if it's just drugs on a small scale, don't worry about it. Go for the big dealers, of course, but the small people don't worry about on the victimless crimes. Thank you.
The next question is for Chris Egger. Chris, racial division has been plaguing American law enforcement for 50 years. What policies will you implement at Camden County to help combat this?
So I believe the real problem is much larger than just a racial issue. I think that the system is actually flawed itself, and instead of recognizing this, the federal government uses it as an opportunity to divide us more. And that way they don't ever have to fix the problem and can keep us divided and conquered. Because the more we're divided, the more power they have. So I think that the ultimate problem is qualified immunity, and that the police officers and the judges and anyone involved with the system are not subject to the law and can get away with doing what they want. And that's the fundamental problem that we have to fix. So in order to fix that, I have an idea for what's called a justice box, where we put a box on a community building, a public courthouse or whatever, put a public camera on it, and have citizens in the community sign up to be put on a list. Each citizen gets a number, and we randomly draw a number, and 10 people are put on a board, and that board looks at cases, and anybody can drop a case in that thing at any time, and the public, if they vote to it, it will go to a jury trial, and that puts the checks and balances in place for we the people over the system, and it will fix all the flaws in the system. Thank you.
Next question is for Jimmy Brashear. You've been undersheriff for nearly 8 years. Will you operate the sheriff's office in a similar fashion as Sheriff Helms? If not, what changes will you prioritize? 2 minutes.
So I would not run it the same as Tony runs it. Me and him actually had an interview, and he asked me if I wanted to be a police officer and to come work for him, and I said, well, if I can enforce a no victim, no crime policy, I'd be happy to. And he declined my offer, and I declined his. So I think fundamentally that's where we need to be, is solving crimes instead of out giving people fines. I think a fine is not a fair punishment. It's not justice. And if there is no victim, we shouldn't be fining people, and it becomes more about money than justice. And I think we just need to focus our resources and police officers into solving the crimes, and we obviously got to have some on the street, but take them off the street and get them as detectives and solving all these mass amounts of crimes that aren't being solved. And maybe not harass people so much about the victimless crimes and problems where there hasn't been anybody hurt. So that's basically what I'd do and how I'd focus on things and how I'd run things. So thank you.
Next question is to Jeff Beecham. Jeff, how does your experience as a municipal police chief prepare you to lead sheriff's divisions typically not found in a city, such as jail administration, civil process, and dispatching? 2-minute response.
I will be open and honest and say that I don't have any experience whatsoever as a police officer or in the inner workings of the system and how it works. But I am willing to learn, and my plan is to keep everything open and honest and basically let the community decide. I'll basically just be a middleman, and I'll document everything and kind of let the community decide which way they want to go with things. I have ran crews, had 25 employees working for me at one point. I've been all over 47 states and done a lot of things, done a lot of amazing feats and jobs that many people thought wouldn't be possible. But I can very well at leading, and I've also coached a lot of baseball, but that's a little different. But yeah, I have no experience whatsoever, and I just plan to keep everything out in the public and let the community decide how to run things, and let them decide, because I'm just going to be basically a servant of the people, you know. I mean, that's kind of what I feel that you're supposed to be. So I'll just want to let the community decide, go from there.
The next question is for Chris Edgar. In a House hearing, you recently testified in favor of putting wave runner deputies on Lake of the Ozarks. That bill did not pass, but as sheriff, would that be a priority? And what duties do you see these deputies performing? How would you pay for that expansion?
Yeah, this is one of those questions that is, I mean, I see all sides of the debate here. Logically, it makes sense to be able to respond faster. The way the lake's set up, to just cross it and get across, it makes sense to have wave runner police officers. The logistics of it is difficult, because then how are you going to pay for it? And officers wearing gear, like Brian said, is going to be dangerous. But I think maybe you could overcome ideas, figure out ideas to maybe have outposts, and just set up outposts that you can get across real quick, and that you could use, maybe strip down and just have a community swim shorts even. Logically, it kind of makes sense to let the water patrol kind of handle it and not get into that too much and too deep. Maybe even get a public response unit and have volunteers, community volunteers help with that as well. So there's just a bunch of different options, but logically it makes sense. Logistically, it seems very difficult. So that's my stance.
The next question is for Greg Sellers. The sheriff has a complicated relationship with the county commission and the county prosecutor. What will you do as sheriff to fix these relationships? 2-minute response.
So my response is going to be just keep everything public and let the public decide. I want to record the meetings and just record everything and have everything transparency. I think that's always the best answer. And I'm just, like I said, a public servant, and I'm a middleman, and I will obviously try to get along. I know James and Ike. I don't know Dawn very well, or any of the other commissioners running, but I'm always a friendly guy, and I try to be as friendly with everyone as I can. And obviously we won't see eye to eye at times, but we can work through it like adults and men and get through it and go on. And like I said, I'll just keep everything public for the community to decide and go from there. That's what I think is the best option and the best way to always do business when it comes to government, because we're just middlemen. It's not up to us. We don't run it, and we don't have any control. So
This question is for Brian Butts. Law enforcement personnel are sometimes allowed to resign for misconduct instead of termination. This practice is known as passing the trash. As sheriff, would you allow an employee to resign for bad conduct and policy violations, or would you terminate them? 2 minutes.
Absolutely 100% fire them. There should be no way for a police officer who is supposed to be held to a higher grade, a higher quality, should be able to commit crimes or do bad things and then just get away with it and be passed around. I think that's the epitome of wrong, and that is a major, major flaw with the system that needs to be stopped immediately. So absolutely, I would fire them and do anything I have to do to make sure that they can't receive a job doing police work in any way, shape, or form again, because like I said, they shouldn't be allowed to continue to be subject to harm people again. If they've harmed someone or done something wrong, they should lose their ability and their power to be a police officer. I think that's a extreme power that may be taken for granted, and it needs to be cherished and respected. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the matter.
The following 3 questions will be answered by each of you. You'll each have 2 minutes, and we'll start with Greg Sellers. Greg, the chief deputy, also known as the undersheriff, is an important person given they are next in line in the absence of the elected sheriff. Who do you plan to hire as your undersheriff, and why? 2-minute response.
So since I can't legally win, my candidacy is pretty much based on philosophy and hypothetical scenarios. So what I've done is I've looked out into the community and seen the people in the community who I feel would do what I'm trying to achieve the most. And so what I'm fundamentally trying to achieve is transparency and openness in the community and freedom. And I have not talked to these gentlemen about this in any way, shape, or form. I hardly even know these guys. I've met them a couple times, talked to them on separate occasions, but these guys have no idea this is coming. They most likely don't agree with what I agree with, so please don't take anything out on them. I just like the way they do business, and that's why I'm putting them out there as a possible whatever, you know. I mean, this is all hypothetical anyway. So my first candidate would be Dave Maupin. He was a police officer in LA, so he knows his way around the system, and he goes to all the local meetings around here and just puts boots on the ground and does more than anyone that is paid. I mean, he's not paid, but he does more than anyone. He's there more than anyone, and he writes articles, and he keeps excellent open tabs on everything and keeps it all open and transparent for the public, and it's a great thing, and I really appreciate all that he does. And I think that he would be the number one contender. Number two would be William Holtz. He fought really hard for COVID, and he always stands up for freedom, and he just does amazing articles, and he really stands up for the little guy, and I appreciate him for that. Third would be Sean Kober. He has always tried to keep everything open and honest and everything out in the public and push for public meetings, and he really strives for freedom as well. So those would be my three candidates, and like I said, they don't know anything about it, so please do not go after them for anything I'm saying, and don't hold them liable in any way, shape, or form. They had no idea this was coming, and like I said, I just chose them because I think that they're good guys who would be good candidates for this position of keeping everything open and honest. So.
The next question will start with Chris Edgar. The citizens approved a tax increase a few years ago to pay for more road deputies. However, some deputy positions remain unfilled. Why is this happening, and what will you do to fix it? 2 minutes.
So I might have a little different perspective than most on this. I believe ultimately we need to try to achieve justice above all for those that are harmed, and that should be our number one focus. And then right beyond that, to try and keep the streets safe, which is what the taxpayers approved the road for the road deputies, and get more people out there. So I just have a little different idea than the norm. What I want to do is take all the road deputies and all the police officers we have available and make them detectives and pay them more. Ultimately, I think that's a big problem and why positions are remaining unfilled, and just pay them a lot more, and once again, seniority gets paid more, and have them solving crimes. That way the community knows that if they've been harmed and if something's wrong, that these cases are going to get solved, and the criminals will know the same thing, that they can't get away with it in our town. And from there, figure out a way to get a rapid response unit to every single community everywhere. And I think that we could do that by reaching out to the community and putting it in the community's hands as much as possible, and saying, hey, if a victim is okay with opening things up to the community, let's let them try to solve cases, or let them respond to disturbance calls and stuff like that, and maybe give that as an option. And from there, teach civilians and citizens how to be police officers, and have them go to a weekend course and give them a body cam at all times, and they're held liable for their actions, and it takes qualified immunity out of the mix. And they're going to be a lot more safer and not fly off the handle so quick, because they know they're going to be held liable. But at the same time, they can show up with 6 people in the community and a live camera and ease the tensions in situations. And it will be immediate in the community wherever you live. And so there will be an immediate response to any problems that arise. And our communities will be super safe, because everybody will be connected and working together, and there'll be a response, and then there'll be somebody solving the crimes. And I think that'll work best for everybody involved.
The final question of the night, and we'll start that with Jimmy Brashear. And Jimmy, we've heard a lot this evening about possible changes in Camden County. What is the most pressing issue facing the sheriff's office, and what do you plan to do about it?
So I feel the most pressing issue is justice. I feel that there's a lot of corruption here and probably corruption everywhere in the world, and we need to stop it from happening. And like I said, that justice box would definitely help to fix the flaws in the system, and from there just focus on, once again, receiving justice instead of bothering people about victimless crimes. Just instead of generating revenue, go for the people that are actually committing the crimes and hold them accountable for what's happening, and stop pulling over people for victimless crimes. I go to court and I'll see a courtroom full of people, and that court will generate $20,000 a day times a year. That's got to be millions of dollars. Where does that money go? How is it tracked? What is happening with that money? Our taxes pay for everything else. So where's the court money going? And I feel that money ultimately is nothing more than a way for the courts to generate revenue. I think that that's not justice at all, because a fine for a single mother that doesn't have the money for insurance, that has to choose between insurance and electric, is not the same for a doctor that speeds and doesn't care, and he'll throw a $100 fine away and not even care. But a single mother will struggle, and it's not a fair system. So I think that community service should be pushed more for victimless crimes and take the money out of it. And let's change the way the police force is set up, and instead of going after people for victimless crimes, let's actually solve the crimes that are being committed, and let people know that if they're harmed, they're going to be okay, that their crimes are going to be solved, and let the criminals know that they can't get away with it, that there's going to be a community, not just a police force, but a community that looks out for each other and raises each other up. And so I guess that's what I'm trying to achieve, and where I'm at with everything is that I just want to create justice in this world and make it fair for everyone. Take out the nepotism, take out the corruption, and fix it. So that's what I'm trying to achieve.
We will now do candidate closing statements, 1 minute each.
So I guess I'm going to close with the fact that we just need to try and give the local community as much power as possible. Ultimately, we all just want the freedom to do our own thing and be left alone. So I feel that freedom is the answer. As long as there is no victim, there is no crime. And if there is a crime, we need due process. And just go from there and let local communities decide what they want. I think that the federal government's on a self-destructive path, and that we have to prepare for what could be to come. And there's so many different ways that we could face turmoil in our lives that we only logically need to prepare. And self-sufficiency is the answer, whether it be self-sufficiency as an individual or as a community. That's going to be the answer that gives us not only security in case of a disaster, but absolute freedom, because without that, we depend on some outside scenario in some bigger form or entity. And so the only way to achieve freedom is to be self-sufficient. So that's all I'm trying to do, and create a little freedom and peace in this world. So thank you guys. Appreciate you all.